Good evening, everybody. This is your Facebook meteorologist, Sean Bagden here, and we are live as flash flooding is currently ongoing in Roswell, New Mexico right now, with a couple of reports already with ranches inundated, roads inundated, and let's get a couple of these reports. We actually just got a new one here. Accident by hydroplaning, okay, that's pretty normal for these sorts of events, but we are seeing several inches of running water over the roadways, Cedar Ave and Deming Street in Roswell itself right now. And this is the scary one right here. 2 feet of water reported at the Burnt Well Guest Ranch, and all roads surrounding the ranch are flooded right now. So flash flood emergencies are ongoing and likely to continue ongoing for the next several hours here, as it looks like we're starting to get some back building of thunderstorms to the south of Roswell right now. And these storms are going to continue moving south to north through the area until we start getting a waning of instability, which should be happening here shortly as the sun has been down for a little bit. But given that southeast flow, that moist southeast flow, would not be surprised to see this continuing through the night tonight with just lighter showers moving through the area. But that is absolutely what we do not need right now, especially across these flood-prone areas in New Mexico. It does not take a lot of rain to get significant flooding out here. And the terrible thing is, we are going to be seeing more of this in terms of flooding rains and training thunderstorms tomorrow across almost the same areas of New Mexico, except this time it's appearing to be a little bit further to the north, which is already starting to get saturated right now, as you can see. We're going to be going through the models shortly here once we finish talking about flash flood emergencies and current radar images right now. But again, continuing to see backbuilding of thunderstorms through the Roswell area and just south. Flash flood emergencies all across the Roswell area right now. And it does look like we may be seeing a potential severe thunderstorm warning getting underway here just to the north and east of Roswell, as we're starting to get a rapidly intensifying band of thunderstorms starting to really bow out. We'll likely see a severe thunderstorm warning on this in the next couple of minutes. Let's just have a quick look at the velocity scan on this. Hold on. There we go. We do have that now. Doesn't actually look like an extreme amount of wind right now, but I would imagine at the surface, since this is a loft, at the surface we'll likely be seeing severe wind gusts with this storm heading toward Elida right now, heading right down the highway towards Elida. Definitely prepare for severe thunderstorm wind gusts over the next couple of hours in Elida, New Mexico, up to the north of the I-10 to come carry in north. Generally looks like just widespread light to moderate rain right now, but this will prime the area for flash flooding again tomorrow to the north of the I-10. So what we're going to do now, we're going to bring up the forecast for tomorrow. We're going to be breaking down some models, and we're going to be talking about what we are looking at tomorrow in terms of the severe weather threat. The good news is it looks like the tornado threat is going to be minimized tomorrow, and we're going to show you why here in a quick second once we have the models up. Here we go. And the first thing we want to have a look at, this was the very important part of today, was our 850 millibar winds that were advecting in moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. We're coming due southeast into the mountain spine of the Rockies and the hills near the Roswell area. And let me pull up wind speeds here. Here you go. These are wind speeds. You can clearly see that southeast flow strong at points into east central New Mexico, southeastern New Mexico here. And that was pulling in the moisture, also elongating hodographs this afternoon, which gives you that spin required to create potential tornadoes. we're going to be talking about tornadoes later in this live because today was quite interesting. We'll say that for right now. But let me pull this up to just past initiation time tomorrow. Okay, we're going to use this this right here, 24 hours out. You can see a couple of changes here that we're looking at in the 850 millibar flow. As you can see, you do have those southeasterlies here across southeastern New Mexico. But the problem with this is they are lighter and they are a little bit more out of a southerly direction than a southeasterly direction. The problem with this is that you're likely going to not be seeing that pooling as much of higher dew points along the hills and the front range of the Rockies in New Mexico here with this sort of flow. It's going to kind of escape to the north and be a elongated area of slightly enhanced dew points at the surface would be my take on it. Just looking at this 850 millibar map, if you do look at the 500 millibar vorticity at the same time, you can clearly see that down to the south of I-10 right here, you are not in the most favorable of areas for potential severe weather, building up these supercells in a rapid fashion like we were seeing today. But up to the north here, along northeastern New Mexico, north of I-10 and into southeastern Colorado, we do start to get this divergence aloft right out in front of this upper low over the Four Corners region here. And you do have that prefrontal vorticity band stringing out along the northeastern corner of New Mexico and southeastern corner of Colorado. Again, these are elongated bands of vorticity, but you do have intense pockets in there. Those intense pockets will likely be supercell thunderstorms that do form during the day tomorrow, as wind profiles are pretty favorable still for supercells. But this elongatedness to this vorticity here definitely signals to us a flash flooding threat, especially given that we have uniform flow aloft, showing that you're going to be having storms tracking from south to north again along this vorticity band. And they're really not going to be moving from wherever they develop. They're just going to continue developing, tracking north, developing, tracking north, and again, potentially creating flash flood issues, potentially even flash flood emergencies across northeastern New Mexico into Raton area, a little bit over towards the Clayton area, up into southeastern Colorado as well. Potential for flash flood emergencies again do exist tomorrow, wherever these storms can set up into banding features and train over the same areas for a long period of time. What was the other thing we're going to look at here? Yes, we are going to be looking at sounding really quick and show you how this really is not looking very favorable in terms of tornadoes at this time. Wait for this to pull up here. We'll share screen with you guys. And there we go. As of right now, this is where the most favorable diffluence aloft is. This is where you're getting that vorticity maxima along and to the east of where this low is going to be. And you can see this is showing wind direction and speed on the right side of this graph you're seeing. This is called a hodograph. The whole thing is called the sounding right here. And in the sounding, you are currently seeing winds aloft, not shifting much with height. You're seeing it very unidirectional. You do have increasing speed with height, though, which does create a slight amount of spin, but really not a lot. And I would be expecting a much more tame day instead of like what we were seeing today. Even though we do have that EML right here, the elevated mixed layer, which is dry air that intrudes in the middle of the atmosphere, which generally tends to get your clearing skies so you can develop instability. And we also don't really have that much instability with this sort of setup here as well. Likely is slightly under to slightly above 1,000 joules per kilogram right now. As you can see with this very narrow nose of Cape here, likely going to be seeing some high winds out of these storms, especially given these higher winds aloft. We generally look to see a transfer of about 80% of those upper level winds from the equilibrium level down to the surface, especially with a stronger elevated mixed layer like this. So as we can see, we do have about 70 knots of wind aloft. So if we do our quick calculation here, hold on, let me get that up. We would be looking at around max wind gusts, kind of like yesterday, around 65 to 70 miles an hour or so with any of these stronger cores that are able to develop. But again, looking at this, how saturated the column is, especially in the low levels here, the main threat tomorrow, it's going to be the flash flooding. Wind is really going to be a side impact. Tornadoes threat is going to be minimal tomorrow, given what we're seeing right now. Hail, definitely a possibility given a slight amount of dry air pushing in the mid-levels there and the steeper low-level lapse rates, but certainly, and given the low amount of Cape we have right here, probably marginally severe hail at best is going to be occurring with these storms. And again, that unidirectional flow with height is going to be producing storms that train over and over the same areas. Definitely need to watch out if you are north of the I-10 in northeastern New Mexico, as there will be significant flash flooding impacts likely wherever these storms are able to set up tomorrow. Moving on into Monday here, the severe weather train does continue as we head into Monday. Let me head up to where it is here on our models, and we'll show you what we are looking at. It's going to be up into eastern Colorado now and western Kansas likely, the main severe weather threat once we move into Monday. Let me share screen. There we go. And let me get this to Monday for you guys. Hold on. Okay. Perfect. Here we go. This is Monday evening for you guys across eastern, even western Kansas right now. Central Kansas definitely looks to be the main player in this event. SPC currently has a marginal risk right now, which we'll break it down right now, but it does look like that seems pretty accurate as models are showing right now. Looking at surface dew points and moisture, you do have this narrow band of enhanced dew points at the surface, but this is likely due to the fact that thunderstorms have already developed within the model, and this is likely some moist air produced by those storms. We're likely going to be seeing these dew points that are slightly outside of that area. So we're looking at probably the mid to low 50s dews, as the NAM generally overdoes dew points. So we're going to have a look at that, but it does look like some marginal dew points at the surface here. We generally look for those low to mid 60s, even the 70s dew points across the plains when it comes to a severe weather event. Certainly don't have that here. It is quite marginal. This would be completely fine across New Mexico, but as you get lower in elevation across the plains, you generally need higher dew points to create a major severe weather event. But going up a little bit in height to the 500 millibars, looking at our vorticity right now, does look like we have an ejecting 500 millibar low right here. And we definitely have the vorticity at 500 millibars to create thunderstorms, potentially severe thunderstorms here. We have that forcing mechanism, and that's going to be right out in front of the 500 millibar low right here, looking to be right along a warm cold front confluence, the triple point right here, where thunderstorms will likely start to form. Could even start to get a couple up here into Nebraska and South Dakota, but these will likely remain below severe limits as they are not really embedded in any diffluence aloft here to increase the potential for severe thunderstorms at this time. But going down to 850 millibars, we'll have a look at that, see if we can get any turning of winds. And it does not look like we're going to have that turning of winds with height that we're going to need to have potential tornadoes with this event. So marginal risk from the SPC certainly sounds good right now, as we do have that unidirectional flow aloft, just like we'll have tomorrow. We do have speed shear, though, which we're going to be showing you in the sounding in a little bit here. So that could be a little bit interesting in terms of wind. This certainly does show the potential for a longer line of thunderstorms to develop and move across the state of Kansas here through the day on Monday. So let's have a quick look at 850 here, kind of in the stronger max of wind along I-70, just so we can have a quick look at the potential mode of thunderstorms we're looking at, potential winds right here. And again, this is exactly what we were talking about. You don't have unidirectional flow all the way through the column, but you have a rapid shift in flow right at about 850 millibars here. This is not incredibly favorable for tornadoes. You can definitely get tornadoes with this sort of setup, but you generally want that 0 to 1 kilometer range right here to have the most turning within it to create a tornado threat. And it does look unidirectional from the surface up to just before 850 millibars. This combined with a dry surface will likely lead to elevated bases of thunderstorms, which an elevated base of a thunderstorm generally tends to make it harder for vorticity to stretch to the surface. And that would create a lower tornado threat here, since we have that higher base, and you need that vorticity to really stretch to the surface here in order to get tornado formation. And those higher bases that we're going to be seeing on Monday will likely decrease the chance of tornado development. Wow, that was a little bit rough there, but we are all good, everybody. The one thing that this does set the stage for would likely be a potentially high wind event along the front of a developing line or bow of thunderstorms, a mesoscale convective system, rather, that we'll be looking at. And looking at the east to west direction, the movement of these storms will likely be seeing a surging line. And given the case that we do have that dry air aloft, we'll likely see these winds right at the equilibrium level here drop to the surface at about 80% of their speed. We'll likely be seeing higher winds aloft than this, just due to the fact that we're seeing a deepening area of low pressure. We'll likely see an acceleration underneath the trough, and that will likely increase these 300 millibar or higher wind speeds. So we are going to have a quick look at that as we roll through models the next few days. So certainly something we're going to be keeping an eye on. We'll likely be seeing 70, 75 mile an hour winds with this. We're not looking at a significant derecho event by any means, like we have seen before. But we definitely have to be cautious of a potential wind event crossing the state of Kansas here. A severe wind event, nothing completely damaging or anything like that, hence the marginal risk, but definitely need to look for an upgrade from the SPC for a slight if those upper level winds do trend to accelerate through the next couple of model runs here. So that'll be very interesting to watch, very interesting trends. But that's your brief overview of the Monday's forecast. And just one other quick thing I did want to touch is the potential tornado outbreak we were talking about today on a couple of posts that we posted in the last couple of days here. So we're going to have a quick look at some soundings, look at some models, and we're going to determine a couple of things here. We're also going to be going over the radar spread across the New Mexico area, eastern New Mexico area here. So that'll be very interesting. So let's get into this really quick. I'm going to pull up the radar one last time here just so we can show you what we're talking about. Hold on. There we go. Okay, and now we're sharing the radar. So let's have a look at the spread of the radars right here in eastern New Mexico. A lot of the tornadoes or potential tornadoes that were happening over the day today with this band of thunderstorms and supercells that did develop across southeastern New Mexico was right about here where those flash flood emergencies are. So we were looking at thunderstorms tracking along this area here. What do we notice that is interesting about this area here? The first thing we find interesting is the spread between the KFDX radar and the KHDX radar. That means, since we're right in the middle of these two radars, the beam is pretty much in the highest setting that it can be when it is touching these thunderstorms for either radar. And in this case, the lowest beam level, we're looking at about 7,000 feet above the surface. So in this case, probably about 700 millibars or so. The problem is KHDX would have been in a great area to observe the surface rotation of these thunderstorms. The only problem with KHDX is there, of course, happens to be a large mountain range right next to it on the eastern side of KHDX. And the problem with this is that the radar beam cannot travel through the mountains. And because of that, it will likely not be able to see the low-level rotation within any of these thunderstorms that did develop during the day today or supercells across southeastern New Mexico. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to pull up some soundings from today, and I'm going to show you kind of my thought process with why we may have actually seen a tornado outbreak today. This may get a little bit theoretical, but we're going to go through this and have pull up the soundings from today. We're going to use Amarillo for right now because that is in the area we're looking at for these storms here. Let me just change my screen share here and we'll get you guys over to the sounding. Here we go. Okay, and now that you guys can see that, what do we notice here? A lot of our turning, and of course this is not as significant of a turn with height as you would have seen over eastern New Mexico because you're not having that more westerly flow up at around 850 that we were seeing over that area. So it's going to be a little bit more maximized, slightly off to the west, but this kind of gets the point across from what we're looking at. But as you can see, a lot of these wind barbs are showing, we can actually look at the photograph right here. A lot of the turning is happening in the lowest kilometer of the atmosphere here, which is going undetected by radars. As we were mentioning before, a lot of the radars where these storms were forming and developing spin and all of this were actually a lot of the radars were seeing these storms only from 6,000 feet above the surface and up. As you can see here, 1 kilometer up is where a lot of our spin was. And given that we were seeing a lot of broad rotation signatures on radar, really shows me a signal that we were likely seeing significantly stronger rotation at the surface, especially since we're seeing the radar was seeing anything really above this point right here, like 1.5 kilometers. And a lot of the spin aloft had already been used below that point. A lot of the effective spin or effective helicity was below where the radar was seeing. So since we were seeing those really amazing radar scans, radar signatures, and a lot of these places were in very unpopulated areas with very minimal roads, a lot of storm chasers and a lot of residents were not able to see any potential tornadoes that would have come with this. This is a very similar setup to the potential EF5 tornado that happened along the Red River over the past spring. And that was an amazing specimen on radar. But again, there was no roads in the area and no storm chasers could see it, verify where it landed or anything like that. But there was obviously a tornado there. It just was not confirmed. This likely happened several times through the day today, as many strong rotation couplets, even aloft and above where most of the effective vorticity and helicity is in the photographs, we're likely looking at several, probably 8, 9, 10 tornadoes that ended up going unwarned and unseen by storm chasers this afternoon, especially given that sparse road network. I'm sure we'll see confirmation of maybe 1 or 2 tornadoes, since we did have a tornado warning in effect. And it looked like Reed Timmer was on that one, and there was some pretty impressive structure on that storm. It was just real hard to see any potential tornadoes in there, as they were likely rain wrapped, or they weren't able to get into a good enough position to be able to look inside the inflow notch and see those tornadoes. But I would not be surprised if we did see a tornado outbreak today, but it just won't end up being verified, as these tornadoes were impacting, or potential tornadoes were impacting, very desolate areas with very limited roadways for storm chasers to get to these storms to verify anything. And that also shows us why there was a very limited amount of tornado warnings through the day today, even though there was that rotation that was seen aloft. Because normally the National Weather Services are going to be warning based on certainty. They don't want to be sounding false alarms and tornado warnings and all of this, especially if there's ranchers out there or anything like that. So they definitely want to keep things in line with their protocols and everything. So they really want that confirmation from the ground, a storm chaser, a rancher, something like that, that says, hey, there's a tornado and it's moving in this way. As well, you'll be able to see that on radar, but they can confirm the tornado on the ground, so then they can issue the warning. As out in this area, you really can't confirm it on radar unless it's a very strong tornado and it's lofting debris really high. Likely any of these tornadoes that did form, today were weaker tornadoes and likely would not be EF3 plus. But we likely did see several tornadoes on the ground across New Mexico today that did go unwarned. So just a very interesting thing I wanted to go over here at the end of the podcast just to kind of show you some of the discrepancies that storm chasers, the NWS, and some of us watching from home have. So that's about all we have for today. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them below, and we will be back tomorrow with updates on the potential severe weather situation across eastern New Mexico, which at this time looks to be more of a flash flooding threat than a severe weather tornado threat, at least for tomorrow. And we'll get back on the severe weather train, likely during the afternoon and evening hours tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody, and enjoy.